we are speaking today to the Secretary, Ministry of Coal. Mr. Jain is the architect of a large part of India's energy policy over the past few decades. His work on developing India's energy policy website is a model for students who want to understand how India's energy security has been framed. He has created probably more analytical tools to analyze India's energy issues than probably few universities can handle one full semester. So welcome to us, Mr. Jain, and thanks a lot for taking out the time. And our thoughts obviously go back to a very difficult year that you have had last year when crisis in the Indian energy security, in the Indian energy scenario developed. So without me trying to say anything, how did it develop and what were the ways in which you went about handling it, almost sitting like as a control room?
Now let me take you back last year to the sad events which took over major part of the world, including India, in the months of April, May and June with the Delta strain of the COVID-19. It was at that time that the whole country went into a lockdown, forced or otherwise voluntary, and shops closed, factories closed, malls closed, and the power consumption really fell down. Incidentally, the spillover of coal stocks with the coal mines of Coal India Limited were historically high when the year began.
And that happened obviously because, as you say, the power demand fell, so there was no offtake from the mines, so Coal India's stock went up massively.
That also happened because of the first strain of COVID, which struck the globe for the first time in the year 1920, the 2021. So in 21 year ending, in 31st March 2021, we were carrying huge stocks and then the Delta strain came. So our production was impacted. There was not much demand, and traditionally in the period of Q1, which is April, May, June, power plants stock up coal because then in Q2, which we are seeing right now, July, August, September, the monsoon set in and coal cannot be evacuated comfortably from the coal mines. They get flooded. But last year that stocking up did not happen. There was a lack of enthusiasm from the power sector also for the demand because nobody knew when the Delta wave would be controlled. So when the Delta receded by July last year, the demand was back. And the pent-up demand, factories were running short of supplies, shops were running short of supplies. So production really ramped up. People started coming out of homes. So July, August, September saw the demand really go up. And that is the time when global developments also impacted the coal sector. India traditionally has had 8% of its power generating capacity in the thermal sector based on imported coal supplies. Those power plants were set up along the coasts and they are boilers that are technologically incapable of consuming Indian coal. So due to the global upsurge in demand, coal prices shot up by 3x, and those plants, they stopped working because their commercial arrangements with the buyers in the Indian power sector did not easily facilitate the passing on of the high prices of coal.
So you were getting series of bad news one after the other and the Coal Mantralaya, and it must have been a very difficult time for you to have marshal all the resources.
Because people feel that India has so much of coal and Coal India Limited is a Sarkari company and coal will be available on demand. So this 8% which plants running at less than half capacity, their demand had to be fulfilled by the Indian coal supplies and there was an upsurge in demand. So all of that led to a situation where by the first week of October, the coal stock at the thermal power plants fell to just maybe 4 days of stock. So it is not that after 4 days the coal would become zero, but it was gradually depleting. And that is the time when there was a national scare and then we had to step in.
And lots of high blood pressure all around.
Certainly, because you cannot allow blackouts and India has never had that, and being responsible governments, responsible officers, that cannot happen.
And you did manage to ensure that there was no major crisis at any particular time. In fact, the daily reports as they showed, while they were localized phenomena, no grid failure or no major upsurge or no major downtime for any industry was reported. So it was a huge learning experience for a country, and you were supplying coal to, as we see from the data, it was about 205 gigawatts of electricity that you were fulfilling. So that sort of a phenomena the credit must go to lots of people for having marshaled it. The coal ministry was at the spearhead of it. How did you coming out of it? What has been the key lessons now that you feel that now we are into the next monsoon, that we are already prepared for and are ready to handle the crisis?
This year the learnings are almost, let us say, a three-pronged strategy. First strategy is that we have been prevailing upon the railway network to give us as many rakes as possible. Because one point which I must share with the listeners is that while we do have enough coal to meet the requirement of the power sector, but sometimes the infrastructure in our mines to be able to evacuate the higher volumes or the railway network availability of rolling stock is not adequate to shift out this sudden upsurge in demand. This year, we have been networking with the Railway Ministry and of course with the Power Ministry, and I must say the railways have done a fantastic job. So the first strategy has been that we are shipping out as much coal as we can in the first quarter, as a result of which by the end of this month we hope to have much higher coal at the thermal power plants than we have seen in many years. Number one. Number two, Coal India's own production targets have been ramped up. Against the 622 million tons of coal production last year, this year they are likely to produce about 700 million tons. So in this H1, we are hoping to produce at least 20 to 25% more coal. So the second strategy has been that we are producing as much coal as we can, and the first strategy was of course shipping out. And the third strategy is that we have also pressed into action the private sector and the non-CIL coal sector who were given mines. You remember after Supreme Court's cancellation of coal mines in 2014-15, we have been allotting coal mines. So for the last 2 years, we have been working very hard with the states, with these allottees, that they should remove, we are trying to remove all regulatory hurdles. Their production this year against what was 89 million tons last year is going to be about 140 million tons this year. So the captive mines and the private sector, the state gencos, their production has also come as a great shot in the arm towards Atmanirbharta.
Those are very impressive numbers. Our listeners may not often know that coal mine, especially during the monsoon, is a very difficult exercise, since large number of our mines are open cast mines. Mr. Jain, with your experiences, how difficult does it become to mine coal during the monsoon session? Would you walk our listeners through some of the challenges that happens so that there's a better appreciation of the scale of effort that's needed?
Coal is actually a surfacial mineral. What we mean by that is that just like limestone, iron ore, bauxite, coal is found quite close to the earth's surface. It's not deep-seated mineral like gold or probably diamond or some other minerals. In the case of coal, you have to remove the earth on top, which at times could be 5 meters thick overburden layer. In the rainy season, as you can see in your own gardens, when rain falls, it soaks into the soil and the soil becomes very wet and difficult to handle. So you can imagine that the stripping ratios, which are often 1:5, which means to remove 1 ton of coal, you have to remove 5 cubic meters of earth. So removal of earth, picking it up, exploiting it and taking it to some distance is a challenge. It has become very heavy. Secondly, the mines get flooded. And most of our coal mines are eastern central India, which are very high rainfall areas. You can imagine that right now in Nagpur and Hyderabad, where we have 2 coal companies, they have received almost 1,000 millimeters of rain in the last 15 days when they are supposed to get 1,400 millimeters in the whole year. So when mines get flooded, it becomes difficult to even remove the coal which may have already been mined and which is lying over there. And then the roads get slushy. There are accidents. These are heavy-duty dumpers, almost carrying 200 tons of coal. So we don't want accidents either. So these are the problems which you face in any mining sector where there is surfacial mineral removal involved. After 2015, after Supreme Court had cancelled the coal blocks which were given away to private sector and to captives, etc., the government has had a very liberalized regime which it has been liberalizing over time. So since 2015, now 2022, the 7 years, we have given away a whole lot of mines. And right now also, as we speak, coal mine auction rounds are in progress. Today, the entry barrier to getting a coal mine is virtually negligible. There is no minimum expectation of a capital net worth, there is no expectation of technical experience, and there's a very little revenue share on which the coal blocks are going away. So, we are expecting the power sector to be catered largely by Coal India so that, they can meet the requirements of supply of coal at reasonable prices so the power prices remain static. But the private sector, which runs steel and aluminium and they supply all over the world, now they are looking at a globalized trade. You have seen how steel sector made tremendous profits in exporting steel, etc., and iron ore. So they need to meet their energy requirement to the extent that they can. Whatever we can give them after meeting the requirements of power, rest they need to produce their own coal, and then they're also dependent on imported supplies.
Well, Mr. Jain, there has been encyclopedic coverage of India's coal sector at a time when probably the world is looking at India's coal sector much more intently than at any time. And I could have thought of nobody better than you, the Secretary of the Ministry of Coal, plus your expertise in the sector, which taken our listeners on such a wonderful journey of understanding the dynamics of the sector. Thank you very much for joining us, sir.
Thank you very much.